Sometimes, though, it's not the coach's fault. The coaches that we saw at the sidelines, you know, Homer Bahal, big names, I absolutely trust those guys' judgment in putting a kid into a tournament. But there is another problem that unfortunately the coaches can't always control, and that is the fact that jiu-jitsu parents be crazy.
Be crazy.
So we saw some stuff at the weekend, right? Do you want to elaborate a little bit on some of that?
Sure, yeah. I think some of these parents have never done jiu-jitsu and don't know what it's like to compete, and don't know what it's like to lose, don't know what it's like to be on the mat. So they don't understand how hard it is to compete, to train, to win, and they just expect so much from these kids. And you know, I saw a lot of just kind of negativity in a way. You know, one parent was getting really vulgar with his daughter, who must have been like 5 years old. You know, using like really foul language with her, and
to try and like what, amp her up, or
no? After this was outside. This was after she competed.
Berating her.
Yeah. So that just turned me off at all. You know, I think Pan Kids is great. Competing as a kid is awesome, you know, but it should be a supportive environment where you're helping these kids grow, learn from their mistakes, and encouraging them 100% along the way, you know?
Yeah, the IBJJF, they're offering an amazing platform right here, right? And they have opportunities for kids to compete, all levels, all different tournaments around the world. But unfortunately, it's not really the coach's fault, it's not the federation's fault, but unfortunately some of these parents they're coming at it and they've got a really distorted point of view. Now, I kind of want to talk about that as a whole. What do you guys think about this? Because we've heard horror stories about parents giving their kids laxatives to make weight, you know, about slapping them across the face like, you know, little kids to try and get them amped up before matches. You know, the kids coming off crying in tears and then getting berated for losing or for tapping out to a submission. And these are children under the age of 10. So, you know, what do we think about kids training and competing jiu-jitsu? Is it actually maybe something that we should shy away from, or should it be done differently? What do we think?
I mean, I don't know. I think I've never really seen some of the stuff you guys are describing in jiu-jitsu like that.
I haven't either, to put it out there. I haven't either personally. I've only had positive experiences.
And I think obviously there's anomaly cases where kids' parents are too tough on them in any sport, right? In any sport, there's going to be guys who put too much pressure, put too much expectation on the kids. But I think generally jiu-jitsu promotes such a positive experience in that way. I feel like a lot of the things that I've seen in jiu-jitsu and competition and stuff, you know, whereas a lot of times where like guys don't tap and they stop the match early, you know, I think that stuff's great. I think protecting the kids, making sure they come off the mat, you know, all right is
yeah, they'll if one
importance.
Kid picks another one up, the referee will be ready to catch him and
yeah,
lower
I think
him down.
the IBJJF does a really good job of kind of like making sure that it is a safe and friendly environment for the kids to compete. You know, I wrestled it as a young kid, and like, not that my parents were like super hard on me or anything like that, but like I think that it really, like wrestling as a younger kid, taught me, you know, like that, hey, you got to work hard to win. You know, you can't just go out there and expect to win. You know, you got to like actually put some work in there. And it taught me like how to win. It taught me that nothing comes easy. You know,
and jiu-jitsu does the same.
Yeah, and I think those are important lessons to learn as a kid that you're going to take through your entire life, right? And so it's unfortunate, you know, that some parents take it too far. But for the most part, for me, I feel like I've seen a lot of positive things.
Did you ever see any of that, like that horror story side of behavior from the parents in wrestling?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's not just jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, definitely not jiu-jitsu. And you know, it's hard for me to like I can look across the room and see a guy yelling at his son or something like that. You know, and who knows what's going on there really. You know, I'm not in that situation, so there could be a couple different factors. Probably.
I think you'd be crazy to say jiu-jitsu is bad for kids. I mean, to me, it's such a empowering environment. You know, you work every day to get better. The coaches generally are just amazing people that want the best. Competition, I think Leo Vieira's approach of, you know, some kids more inclined to do it, go for it, and if not,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my question then. So competition can be good, but how do they handle that pressure? Is it too much pressure for them?
I don't think so. You know, I think a lot of kids want to compete. I think it's natural, especially if they've never done it. They see, you know, the older students in class wanting to go off to compete. They train hard, and they want to be part of the fun. And you know, maybe they have a good first experience, maybe they don't. And a lot of that depends on parents being reasonable with their expectations Because ultimately winning or losing isn't necessarily as important as like having a great trip. You know, going out to California for kids' pans, the whole thing might be a fantastic memory, even if you got, you know, out your first match. So I would wholly recommend, you know, kids compete if they want to. If they're shying away from it, there's no need to force them. But from my experience growing up, I wanted to compete. You know, I grew up surfing, and competing in surfing was a natural thing, and it was just, no one told me to. It was there, it was happening, and it was a big deal. People were talking about it, so of course.
But let me flip this around then, going back to the jiu-jitsu parents be crazy, that if your dad had been like psycho and saying like, Chase, you have to get up at 5 a.m. every day, you've got to be at the beach, you've got to be running sprints, you've got to be doing this, I want to see you surfing every day, you've got to make it to the top, you'd probably get to 11 years of age and be like, screw surfing, I don't want to have anything to do with that.
Man, just a quick anecdote about Kerry Kolat, who I think a lot of guys know in the wrestling sphere. Kerry Kolat, one of the best American wrestlers basically ever, you know, and he has a story, you know, went to the Olympics, went to the World Championships, placed. It's a crazy story, but he's one of the best in the world, right? And his father was probably the ultimate crazy guy. He literally was having a problem where he was getting stuck on bottom position in wrestling. Guys were riding him out, and he was losing matches by getting rode out. And his dad said, "You don't want to get up off bottom? All right, I'm going to make you get up off bottom." And he literally got a cattle prod and would cattle prod Kerry Kolat, and he would. And every time he got stuck on bottom in practice or something like that, his dad would literally...
He'd zap him.
Yeah, would zap him. and Kerry is telling this story, you know, he's 40 years old now or something like that. And obviously, like, you can't do that today. Obviously, that's something that's very, very frowned upon, and for good reason, probably.
Yeah. Frowned upon, yes, frowned upon.
But he definitely did acknowledge that he got out from bottom. From there on out, you know, like he didn't get rode out the rest of the period from there, you know, like those extreme measures made him a better wrestler for whatever that's worth.
A lot of athletes' stories are kind of like this from the Olympic elite level, where they do have insane coaches, insane parents, like some kind of driving force that's unnatural. And
yeah, I'm sure those Chinese and Russian gymnastics coaches are really mellow, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And so he did. He didn't. You know, I don't want to say he hated his dad, but he didn't have a lot of love for his dad, especially in those years when he was developing in wrestling. But he definitely acknowledges that his dad made him a champion.
But he got an Olympic medal to show for it. So that's the kind of the trade-off, right?
And it's a big trade-off, and maybe there's no right or wrong here. I mean, it's tough to say how to raise someone's kid. Like maybe you have this vision for your child being an Olympic wrestler, and that's what you set them on, that path you set them on. It has consequences of maybe alienating a normal kind of relationship, but...
Well, I've got an interesting sort of a point of view about the whole competition thing, because I'm not a huge fan of kids competing at such an early age. Now, don't get me wrong, I can see the benefits of competition for jiu-jitsu. I absolutely think that kids should compete, but I think that maybe they should start around about the age of 11 or 12, because as you said, before that, there's such there is the possibility of these kids really getting like a traumatic experience with jiu-jitsu, and it's such a formative age. They associate jiu-jitsu with these negative feelings, negative experiences, and they just never go back. But I did some informal research when I first moved to Brazil, 2011, and I really wanted to kind of dive into almost like the secrets of success for a lot of these high-level guys. Now I'm talking members of the Gracie family, members of the original Carlson Gracie team, that were the ones that dominating in the 90s, and everybody in between. And an interesting thing I found is that regardless of the age that they started jiu-jitsu, whether it was the Gracie on the mat since he was a toddler, or whether it was some guy who came to jiu-jitsu at 11, 12 years of age with one of his childhood buddies, none of them really took it seriously until about 14 or 15. And you look at kids up until that age, developing the whole motor coordination, the skills, are they really going to learn jiu-jitsu at that age? Or, is the teenage years the time when they're actually going to start dedicating themselves, and then, boom, that's when they become the high-level competitors?
I would agree with that. You know, some of these kids went out there, the Pee-wee division, they must be four years old. The ref would say, fight. And then they would just look at each other, like a deer in the headlights, and not move.
What do you mean?
You know? They're looking at the crowd and stuff, which is entertaining for us. But I mean, the kid is just like, man, he's in shock out there.
And they grab each other and they fall over. And yeah.
So there's that whole thing. Yeah, I don't think you should force this on kids at a young age, especially when like you're saying, their coordination hasn't developed yet. That was a big thing that I could see, where some kids were just more mature, had matured physically over other kids, but they're in the same weight class, the same division, the same belt, you know? So it's just, there is a right time to introduce jiu-jitsu, and I think too early is too soon.
It's really, it's hard to sustain like a very focused, competitive career in any sport when you're trying to become like a world champion at 8 years old or something like that, you know, and then to sustain that for 20 years, you know, that is very, very difficult. So you do, I think there is like kind of like a finite number of years that you can really be dedicated to any sport and try to be the best at it. You know, like
you nailed it right there. Actually,
I was thinking of like the Mendez brothers, right? 26 years old and they're done. You know, and they had a coach that was very hard on them. So.
Well, you're talking about your wrestling experience as well. It makes me think because you never really see wrestling like athletes unless they're at the Olympics or something like that. Like they finish college and they're done, right? And like, well, early 20s.
Yeah, I think of a guy, Chance Marsteller, I believe his name is, and he was like a phenom, the best middle school wrestler in the country for 4 years straight, the best wrestler in high school for 4 years straight. You know, like this guy was going to be an Olympic champion, and he goes to college, and he's just like, guys, I'm done. I need to do something else. Or I can't sustain this high level every single day, you know, because he's been doing it since he was, you know, 8 years old, and he got to college, and it was just like, I feel like, you know, I don't know the full story, so I'm kind of speaking a little out of turn, but it seemed like it was just too much for him.
And then we've got in IBJJF World Championships, you've got guys over the age of 30 walking in and winning black belt world title.
There you go. Yeah,
so,
that's true.
You know, well,
one cool thing I will say about the IBJJF is that you do. Kids, IBJJF kids fans, you do have to win a medal. You're not getting a participation trophy. And today, everyone's getting a participant. No, you got to earn that thing. You got to earn your spot on the podium. So
for sure. That. I mean, I just want to bring this up before we close this topic to a this is a very well respected jiu-jitsu coach. We saw him get his coral belt at the ceremony there at the Masters Worlds last year. Jose Leon Teixeira, and this is a guy that he was one of the original founders of Gracie Barra, and he coached Renzo from like the age of 13 or 14 years of age, right? He had like Renzo in his class when Renzo was a little yellow belt and stuff. So that's the level that this guy is at, and he's known in Brazil as being one of the kind of the best kids coaches out there. And he says himself that, you know, the role of the coach in that environment with kids is not about producing champions. It's about forming good human beings. And for me, I think that's one of the most powerful things about jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, we often here at FloGrappling are so sports-centric. Sometimes we can kind of lose sight of some of the best and most fun and interesting parts of jiu-jitsu is the way that it does affect your character. And I mean, as a kid, it's about having fun and sharing, right? Like not being a little bastard. And in jiu-jitsu, you can learn some lessons that way, you know, both through the guidance of a teacher or just by having a tough day on the mat. So it's a really important, I think, great part of a kid's foundation.
Humbling, jiu-jitsu.